What's going on, guys? Kevin here from thesportsgeek.com, and in this video, Ian's going to go over his DraftKings CFL Week 4 picks. Before we get onto those, I just want to quickly show you guys here that the CFL contests at DraftKings are looking like we're going to have some overlay in them. So what that means is DraftKings guarantees these prize pools, and if they don't fill up, DraftKings is going to have to add their own money to the contest. So it just gives you a better chance to win some money. It looks like that may be the case tonight. So take advantage of that, play in some CFL contests tonight, and I hope you enjoy Ian's picks. Hopefully they make us some money. And if you are enjoying these pick videos, make sure you click the like or the thumbs up button on YouTube here, and I'll continue to bring Ian back each week for the CFL picks. All right, enjoy the video.
This is Ian Cameron on behalf of thesportsgeek.com, and I'm back to break down CFL DraftKings for the upcoming CFL football slate for Week 4 in the Canadian Football League. Let's get right to it. Let's start looking at the quarterback positions this week, and really, to me, it's pretty obvious the go-to guys are at quarterback, who they are for Week 4 in the CFL this week, because when you look at it, number 1 and number 2 on this list, Trevor Harris and Mike Riley. I know they're the most expensive options here. Trevor Harris, 11.1K, Mike Riley, 10.8K. But these two guys, week in and week out, have absolutely gotten the job done. 29.7 DK points per game for Trevor Harris, 31 more last week. Another tremendous performance. Racking up yards, racking up touchdowns, just continues to get the job done for Ottawa. I think you have to either go for him or you have to go for Mike Riley. I know I'm a value guy. I like looking for value, but to me, Harris, Mike Riley, they're producing week in and week out. Again, Riley in that same boat, 29.4 DK points per game this season. Had a tremendous game last week as well for this Edmonton team. 4 touchdowns for Mike Riley against Saskatchewan last week. Again, these are two guys that I would want as my quarterback this week. I'm not screwing around with these lower value options. I want the production. I think they're going to give it that production this week, Harris and Riley. You know, Ricky Ray, you could argue, does have some value as well at $8,600 this week. He did have a much better performance on the road, too, last week against a very good BC Lions defense. I think that Ricky Ray could garner some lower tier value this week at the quarterback position. Other than that, though, I mean, Darian Durant, 9,400. He's got a tough matchup against a very good BC Lions defense. I don't think it's going to be easy for him to rack up a ton of DK points this week. Also dealing with some fluctuation as well at the receiver position. That could affect his production as well. Jeremiah Masoli just can't hang on to the football, and he's making bad decisions. The yardage is there for the Hamilton quarterback, but again, he's a guy that's struggling right now to protect the football. 8,900. I think you could do better than that. The Montreal quarterback situation, I don't know if you should touch that with a 10-foot pole. Because Kevin Glenn is injured, may not play in this game. Rakeem Cato is back up. The great Marshall Thundering Herd quarterback had a tremendous college career at Marshall, did Rakeem Cato. He would get the start if Kevin Glenn can't go. But again, with so many injuries at receiver for Montreal, Deron Carter may serve as one-game suspension. He may or may not. S.J. Green is injured. Kenny Stafford is injured at that receiver position for Montreal. So they've just got a ton of issues offensively. Who's going to be their quarterback? Maybe their top 3 receivers all out this week. So I don't want any part of Montreal from a quarterback perspective this week. And it's tough. Jonathan Jennings, 7,700. He took a big step back, in my opinion, last week against Toronto. Got pulled in the second half for Travis Lulay. Did not have a very good game, so I don't know if I would go with him, even though he's very cheap at $7,700. He is on the road now. Saskatchewan, tough place to play. So I don't know if Jennings is someone I'd want to pull the trigger with. To me, it's Harris and Riley. Clearly, your top 2 options, even though you have to pay a premium to have them in your lineup. At running back, you've got some decent. I would keep riding John White. I really would. John White had a big time performance last week for the Edmonton Eskimos. I recommended him against Saskatchewan. Really, he delivered the goods. He was very good. 96 yards. He had a 1 rushing touchdown. 20.3 DK points for John White last week. Very good performance from him. Can't ask for more than that. You get over 20 DK points in the CFL from a running back. That's pretty good because it's a passing league. So you take that when you get that kind of production from John White for sure. I'd look at him again this week against Winnipeg. I'm still not sold on that Winnipeg run defense. Again, John White's one of those guys that usually gets stronger as the game goes on. The more carries he gets, the more work he gets. the better production he's going to have for you. And I think John White definitely a guy I would consider at running back. Hey, and 7,500, that price creeping up definitely, but still a guy I would look at. Montreal's got an issue with their running backs. Tyrell Sutton is injured. Brandon Rutley, I'm not sure I trust him as a big-time producing running back in his spot. Jeremiah Johnson is questionable to play this week, so you want to hold off on that. Brandon Whitaker's interesting. Brandon Whitaker got back on track last week against BC. He had a tremendous game, easily his best game running the football against a very good BC defense. 97 rush yards, 22.2 DK points per game, or 22.2 DK points rather last week for Brandon Whitaker. Fantastic. Great performance against a very good BC defense. I've been talking about how good that Lions defense has been in every video basically we've done for CFL DraftKings here with the sportsgeek.com. And I think Brandon Whitaker might be worth a look because you're getting a good price with him. Again, running backs are the kind of position in the CFL, if you're going to pay cheap for a position, it's running back, because you don't want to put too much emphasis and too much of your salary into the running back position here. So Brandon Whitaker, worth a look probably this week. Maybe Curtis Steele as well, 5,900, a cheap option from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. He's actually performed pretty well so far. White, probably the top tier option for me at running back, but Whitaker and Steele, Whitaker from the Argos, Steele from the Roughriders, definitely are value considerations at running back in my opinion this week. Wide receiver, Chris Williams, the salary obviously is going to keep skyrocketing on this guy. Everybody knows how good he's been. $11,000, you got to pay a premium. Same with Darius Bowman, but both of those guys have been producing big-time games in the passing game and the receiving game all season long. So there's a reason you're paying, five figures to have Williams and Darius Bowman of Ottawa and Edmonton in your DraftKings lineup. Darrell Walker, not a cheap option. And 9,700 is still pretty expensive for Darrell Walker, considering he hasn't made a big impact yet in any of the games. I mean, when you look at it, 10.1 DK points for him last week, 17.5 per game on the season. It's okay, but you want to get better than that for $9,700. So, just be a little bit careful there. I do think Edmonton can move the football against Winnipeg. Maybe this could be a breakout game for Darrell Walker, but, that price is a little iffy. Luke Tasker, to me, 8,600, maybe worth a look for Hamilton. He's clearly become Masoli's go-to target in the passing game, even more so than Chad Owens, whose catch rate's not very good, and Andy Fantuz, who's really kind of been a forgotten man. So I think if you're going to go with a Hamilton receiver, Luke Tasker is probably the obvious choice. I still hold on to belief that Tyquan Underwood, while he's filling in for the injured Terrence Tolliver for this Ticats team, offers value. But again, Underwood didn't really make much of an impact last week. He dropped what would have been a sure touchdown in that game against Winnipeg. I know he's only 4,000. Maybe you roll the dice with him. I'd consider it, but we'll see. That being said, 4,000 for a guy that does have the talent. He didn't show it last week. They didn't target him much. He dropped an easy touchdown in the end zone. That concerns me. But I think even at 4,000, Underwood still might be worth a look there this week. Jace Davis for Winnipeg, actually, $4,300. He might be worth a play here. I mean, 15.4 DK points last week, 14.8 DK points per game average. A guy that is gradually becoming more and more targeted by Drew Willie, the Winnipeg quarterback. And Edmonton's defense has been awful. Let's be honest, it has stunk. It's been brutal. I've been able to run the football and catch passes probably against this Eskimo defense so far. Honestly, I probably could. That's how bad they've been. And Jace Davis, to me, maybe Weston Dressler. I think you maybe look for some Blue Bomber receivers this week because, again, this is a bad Edmonton defense. They've not shown me anything in terms of being able to get stops on a routine basis. So maybe you look at a Jace Davis at a very, very good price, $4,300. That's definitely value personified right there on him. Like I say, Weston Dressler, $7,100, a guy that might be worth a look. Same with Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith made that crazy catch last week against Hamilton for a touchdown. You didn't even see the ball coming into his hands, and it's like just somehow slithered its way like a snake under his arm, and he was able to catch it. Amazing catch, really. It's got a ton of replay and highlights across TSN and all that last week. But Ryan Smith, 7,000, maybe another guy you target. 17.1 DK points for him last week, including that touchdown reception. So again, I think Winnipeg, I've said stay away from this team on offense this year a lot, but I think this week might be the week you target some Blue Bombers, because Edmonton's defense, I mean, you give up 45 to Ottawa, you give up 36 to Saskatchewan last week, giving up, 400, 500 total yards of offense on a routine basis through 2 games. They got a lot of work to do, that Edmonton defense, and they lost Chris Jones, defensive mastermind, who's now head coach and GM with Saskatchewan, and it looks like the growing pains that are showing losing Chris Jones. And they've got a lot of new faces, especially at linebacker and secondary, very young in those 2 categories. And a defensive front that was supposed to be tremendous pass rushing, they haven't gotten the pressure on opposing quarterbacks people thought they would. So Edmonton's defense struggling. Maybe Winnipeg's offensive playmakers will be the beneficiary of those Edmonton struggles on defense this week from a DraftKings perspective. All right, let's end with DST. DST this week, Ticats, the number 1 option at 5,500. I can't argue with that. In fact, I'd still consider playing them. I really would. I mean, Montreal's offense, who's going to be quarterback? Kevin Glenn's injured. It might be Rakeem Cato. And if Glenn does play, he's bothered by that eye injury. But more importantly, Montreal's just decimated at receiver. I mean, Deron Carter may or may not play, serving his 1-game suspension. That depends on the appeal process, how that goes. But more importantly, Kenny Stafford injured on the 6-game injured list. S.J. Green out for the season. Who are they going to throw the football to? That's going to be the ultimate question here for this Montreal Alouettes team. I mean, when I look at it, they signed Jacoby Ford from Clemson, but other than that, you got B.J. Cunningham, you've got Sam Jaguar, Nick Lewis. Nick Lewis is probably going to be the guy that's really going to benefit from the injuries at receiver. I forgot to mention that in the receivers. If you're going to play someone in Montreal, it's Nick Lewis, or you leave the Montreal receivers alone this week, in my opinion. Nick Lewis at $5,700. But anyway, getting back to quarterback or defense, Hamilton, whether it's Glenn dealing with the eye injury or Cato, I think Hamilton's defense is probably a pretty good choice this week. And let's not forget, they played pretty good defense in their lone previous road game in Toronto when they won that game 42-20. So Ticats defense, they're worth a selection, 5,500. Don't forget, Brandon Banks had a return touchdown last week against Winnipeg. He is a dynamo in the return game. Return yardage, return touchdowns count toward your DST output. And for that reason, even more of a reason with Brandon Banks and his ability to return kicks, even more of a reason to consider Hamilton as your DST option this week. BC, 5,300. I've liked BC all season long. Actually, they've given Darian Durant fits. He's had some bad games in the past, Durant against BC. Remains to be seen if that carries over to this season. But again, I think I can't argue with BC as a DST option this week. Edmonton at 5,100 is still ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, 3rd highest priced defense for as bad as they've played through 2 weeks. No thank you. I want no part of Edmonton there. Really don't want any part of Winnipeg either. I mean, Edmonton's offense has been great. Mike Riley and that offense, every offensive line starter back, lots of weapons at receiver. They've carried John White at running back. They've carried that Edmonton team through 2 weeks. So I don't like that matchup for Winnipeg's defense. Toronto's defense, I think right away I don't want any defense against Ottawa right now, the way Trevor Harris is playing, so no. Alouettes, yeah, I mean, Alouettes could be worth a consideration, 4,600. Jeremiah Masoli continuing to be plagued by turnovers. Rough Riders against Jonathan Jennings as a value defense. Yeah, this week might be the week we finally see Chris Jones, start to take strides forward with that defense. And then the Red Blacks at the bottom of the list, 4,400. Ricky Ray and the Argos got going offensively last week against a very good BC defense. I don't think Ottawa's defense is quite as good, so Ottawa, I wouldn't touch them there this week. I think, to me, Ticats, Lions, and maybe you look at the Alouettes this week. Those would be the top 3 defenses for me that I'd use in DST. All right, that's going to do it. That's my look at CFL DraftKings for Week 4 for thesportsgeek.com. I'm sports handicapper Ian Cameron. Thanks for the kind words. Glad you're enjoying the videos. As always, good luck filling out your CFL Week 4 DraftKings lineups, and we'll be back next week to talk Week 5 CFL DFS.